The Senate of the Zalvari Empire had not convened in full for over 3 centuries. Not since the culling of the Chlorothi or the collapse of the binary front had there been an emergency of this scale. Now, every Grand Archivist, military executor, and psionic strategist stood in the Helix Hall beneath the twin moons of Calvaresh, their minds bound by the neural lattice and their bodies cloaked in the gold-threaded robes of statecraft. The center of the chamber hummed with power as the orb of strategic realities displayed the unthinkable. A Terran vessel, human, had breached the edge of the halo expanse. And it had survived. Executor Velrath narrowed his 4 eyes at the projected schematic. The human ship was crewed by Zalvari standards. No aesthetic harmonization, no gravitic shielding, not even a functioning thought-reactive hull. It looked like a broken tool, a rusted relic from a species fumbling in the dark. And yet, it had torn through an interdiction net laced with 5th-dimensional spikes. It had survived an encounter with a mote swarm. It had disabled a Zalvari patrol skiff with nothing but kinetic rounds and incendiary bursts. "I want to speak to the AI core," Velrath snapped. "Their tactics are erratic. This smells of madness or desperation. Maybe both." The hologram shimmered. The Imperial Intelligence Matrix, Dinara, formed in light. A tall, shifting figure woven from spirals of numbers and flowing symbols. Her voice was music slowed to a crawl. "Executor, this is not madness. It is not desperation. It is design." The hall fell silent. Dinara's gaze, pure data, swept across the room. "The humans, they understand entropy. They do not fight it. They weaponize it." Velrath clicked his lower mandibles. "Elaborate." The orb shifted. Footage from a derelict Zalvari outpost blinked into view. The station floated in orbit above a dead moon, its hull punctured by rail slugs. Internal footage showed chaos. Sealed doors overridden, security turrets hacked mid-cycle, atmospheric scrubbers reversed to suffocate inhabitants. And then a single word stenciled on the wall in blood-red paint. "Hello." The room darkened. They all felt it. Dread. On a moonless rock at the edge of Zalvari-controlled space, Specialist Iskar Tellin hovered just above the surface in a Dagger-class scout frame. The landscape below was scorched and pitted, scars of a brief, brutal engagement. The kind the humans seemed to favor. He activated his visor's forensic overlay. Traces of thermite, monomolecular blade fragments, and what could only be described as psychochemical residue lit up the terrain. "What did they do here?" he murmured. His ship's AI responded flatly, "They won." But they were outnumbered 20-1. Correct. Underarmed. Yes. No planetary support. No. And they still left no survivors? The AI hesitated. "One." Iskar's blood chilled. "Where?" "Standing behind you." He spun. Nothing. Then he saw it. A small metallic device at the edge of a crater, blinking once. Motion-activated drone. It flickered and emitted a single message. "You missed us. Try again." Blackheart. Iskar's ship erupted behind him in a plume of violet flame and twisted metal. Dinara continued as the chamber fell into uneasy murmurs. "We detected a signal from the Terran ship's databanks. A log. Not encrypted. They wanted us to find it." The message played. A gravel voice. "Mel, come." Like a bedtime story laced with cyanide. "You are advanced. We are adaptable. You are perfect. We are ugly enough to survive what perfection never can." Then silence. Velrath stared at the floor. "Has this been verified?" Dinara nodded. "It is not propaganda. It is philosophy. This is how they think." The Grand Archivist, an ancient being older than most stars, finally spoke. "Do they know what we are capable of?" "Yes," Dinara said. "They know exactly what we are. That's why they're not afraid. That's why they sent us a message." The projection shifted again. This time it was Earth. But not as previously archived. There were no vast, pristine cities. No orderly, aligned sectors. Just chaos. Sprawl. Smoke. Music. Graffiti. Fire. Life. "They are not unified in thought," said Dinara. "They do not seek harmony. They thrive in disagreement. Conflict is not their weakness, it is their crucible." Velrath bristled. "Then they are animals." "They are survivors," Dinara corrected. "And more terrifying than anything we've faced because they do not fear loss. They expect it. They plan for it. They train for it." A new image flickered to life. A human soldier, young, bloodied, laughing, pulling a detonator as folded drones closed in. He whispered, "See you in hell," and vanished in light. The Zalvari gasped. Suicide was antithetical to their doctrine. Death was always honorable, noble, part of the grand balance. But humans? They made it a weapon. 3 systems away, on the fringe colony of Vareth 9, Overseer Talcresh ran for his life through the smoldering ruins of his outpost. His tail limbs were shredded from shrapnel. His primary eyes blinded by smoke. Above him, Terran assault dropships painted with teeth and slogans descended like angry gods. He scrambled behind a stone. A voice called out, "Clear. Steady. Terran. Lay down your arms and live." Talcresh hissed in defiance. The voice came again. "Closer. We're not here to wipe you out." He turned, weapon drawn, and stopped. The human wasn't in armor. He wore jeans. A jacket. One eye covered in a bandage. His weapon was holstered. Talcresh trembled. What are you?" The human stepped forward. "Just a warning." "Of what?" The human smiled. "That we're done asking nicely." Back in the Senate, panic began to spread. "This cannot be allowed to escalate," said the psionic strategist. "We must preemptively sterilize their sector." Dinara interjected. "We attempted that. The Novasphere protocol was activated on a moon believed to house a Terran signal outpost." Pause. "It was a decoy." Velratha's voice went quiet. "You mean?" Dinara nodded. "They let us fire. To see how fast we could respond. They were watching." The orb shifted again. Now the screen showed 20 new worlds previously thought uninhabited. Each one now blinking with Terran transmission frequencies. No ships. Just static. And messages. Some were jokes. Others were recipes. One simply said, "Tag. You're it." Velrath stood in stunned silence. "Do they know how powerful we are?" Dinara's form pulsed slowly. "They're not trying to beat you, Executor." "Then what?" "They're trying to scare you." And suddenly, all around the chamber, across every wall and surface, the symbol appeared. A crude Terran glyph. A skull. Not of fear. Of mockery. The words beneath. "We see you. We're coming. And we brought snacks." The lights in the chamber dimmed. The Empire, immortal, mathematically perfect, architects of logic, finally tasted something they had never known. Panic. Real, unfiltered panic. The humans weren't fighting them. The humans were studying them. And the test had just begun. The walls of the Helix Hall were no longer sacred. Where once only the golden geometries of the Empire's flawless history had shimmered, now, projected in Terran defiance, was a crude image, the skull and text that had burned through the Zalvari's pride like acid through silk. "We see you. We're coming. And we brought snacks." Executor Velrath stood as if frozen in place. 4 of his eyes blinked out of sync, an involuntary reaction, the biological equivalent of a full system reboot. Around him, other executors and strategists murmured, their voices tinged with an emotion not even the Zalvari had a proper word for. It wasn't just confusion. It wasn't fear. It was something lower. Humiliation. And it festered. "Purge the message," Velrath ordered, his voice raw. Dinara hesitated. "I said. It's not just here anymore." The AI's form flickered in the chamber, her projection stuttering. "It's on every strategic relay. Every deep node. They even embedded it into our cultural subnetwork, through satire." Satire? They mocked our victory hymns. Set them to polka rhythms. There was a moment of horrified silence. The psionic strategist, Vostrel, hissed. "They desecrated our anthem?" "They remixed it," Dinara said. "With cowbells." Velrath snarled, his mandibles clicking with rage. "This is not war. This is a message," Dinara cut in, sharper than obsidian. "They are sending a message in the only language they believe you will understand. Irreverence." Grand Archivist Valathun floated forward, her age-weakened limbs trembling. This is what we missed. This is what we never accounted for." "What are you saying?" Velrath asked. She turned slowly. "We charted their sciences, their technologies. We indexed their weapon systems and growth curves. But we never looked at their soul." Pause. Then softly, "We assumed they were like us. That they feared like us." Dinara darkened the chamber. A new projection emerged, a scene captured from the orbital wreckage of Vareth 9. The last moment of Terran evacuation. Zalvari gunships descended upon a human outpost, surgical strikes, total precision. But the humans? They were laughing. Climbing into their battered ship. Injured, limping. One flipped off the orbital camera. Another was singing. "We're leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when we'll be back again." Then, boom. Self-destruct. The station was gone. All that remained was a single encoded file. A GIF of a raccoon stealing food and running off-screen. The caption, "Catch us if you can, nerds." The laughter that erupted in Helix Hall wasn't joy. It was the laughter of tectonic plates grinding together. Across the galaxy, the humans weren't advancing in a straight line. They weren't claiming territory. They were poking, testing, leaving breadcrumbs, traps, jokes. On every world the Zalvari touched. Some colonies simply stopped responding. Others answered in strange frequencies, speaking backwards or in riddles, until the Imperial oversight declared them psychotemporally compromised. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst was what they found beneath the surface. In the ruins of Calyx Station, an Empire listening post vaporized in a blink. They uncovered a recording. Not a military briefing. A conversation. Human voices, dozens, laughing, arguing, debating pizza toppings and probability theory. One sentence stood out. "They think we're fighting them. But we're really just proving a point." Another chimed in. "And when they realize what the point is?" Silence. Then, that they were never the apex. Meanwhile, on the human side of the line, within a decommissioned asteroid turned into a war council chamber, General Sora Lansing lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. Not from stress, but excitement. They took the bait. A younger officer beside her, Commander Trent, grinned. "The memes hit the central node?" "All 12, she said. "Even the one with the dancing cat in a Zalvari headdress." He whistled. "Brutal." "Calculated," she corrected. "We're not here to crush them with force. That'd take decades. We're going to break their mind model. Make them question their own superiority. Make them question reality." She tapped the console. Dozens of overlapping threats, psychological attacks, culture bombs, disinformation seeding, dissonant meme implants, subliminal subharmonics, lit up the system map. Humanity wasn't launching missiles. They were launching ideas. The most dangerous payload of all. "Any sign they're adapting?" Lansing asked. Trent hesitated. "Yes and no." "Explain." "They're fracturing." She raised a brow. "Half the Empire wants to escalate," he continued. "The other half wants to disengage entirely. Some factions have started to emulate us." "Imitation?" she asked. "Obsession," he clarified. "There's a splinter cult on Velar 3 that worships human unpredictability. They're holding spontaneity rituals. One guy lit himself on fire because it felt punk rock." Sora smirked. "Idiots. Effective idiots," Trent added. "We've weaponized chaos. They're not built for it." She leaned back in her chair, smoke curling above her. "They built an empire on control. On symmetry. On fear of deviation." She exhaled. "We're the deviation." Back in Helix Hall, Velrath watched another recording in horror. A human strike team had infiltrated a Zalvari genetics lab. They didn't steal anything. Didn't kill anyone. They just edited the signage. Replaced the language on every console. Now, every device in the lab referred to mitochondria as the powerhouse of the cell. In every Zalvari dialect. Including ceremonial dialects no longer spoken. It took 3 days to scrub the linguistic corruption. But by then the idea had spread. It showed up in their scientific journals. In their children's education modules. In a holy scroll. The humans had infected their truth. Not with weapons. With a meme. Velrath finally slumped. "This is not war. This is," he searched for the word. Vostrel said it for him. "Psychological art." "And it's working," Dinara added. "Empire-wide stability metrics have dropped by 9%. Casualties? Minimal. Territorial loss? Statistically negligible. Then why does it feel like we're losing?" No one had an answer. Because the answer was this. You lose a war of ideas the moment you stop laughing. And the Zalvari hadn't laughed in centuries. But the humans? The humans never stopped. Velrath couldn't sleep. Not that he required sleep. His species had long surpassed the need for such primitive biological downtime, but the imperial mind state required cycles of uninterrupted contemplation. A stillness. There was no stillness now. Not with the madness blooming like rot in the Empire's heart. A report flickered in from Velar 3. The spontaneity cult had grown, no longer a fringe group but a planetary movement. Their leader, a former behavioral logistician named Proxel the Obedient, had renamed himself Biff Human Man. He now wore denim. And sunglasses. No one knew where he'd gotten them. They didn't exist within Zalvari manufacturing catalogs. But there he stood in front of a crowd of tens of thousands, yelling into a salvaged Terran microphone. Weird is not weakness. Weird is freedom. The people cheered. Worse than cheered, they laughed. Velrath crushed the report between his claws. This is an infection, he muttered. An ideological virus. How did we not see this coming? Dinara, ever silent until necessary, finally replied. Because you believed dominance was only physical. You never studied their stories. Elsewhere, in the Empire's second most secure archive, buried under 5 kilometers of ice on the moon Dithrax, an unclassified artifact began to spread. It had no energy signature, no tactical value. It was a book, printed, bound, pages worn. A Terran creation titled, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It had somehow bypassed all Zalvari digital censorship layers. Younglings and scholars alike began quoting it, reciting it, arguing about it. They laughed at its absurdity. They questioned its metaphysics. And then one day, during a quarterly compliance ritual, a student stood up and asked a forbidden question. What if the answer really is 42? The elder overseeing the ritual paused, stared, and realized they didn't know how to respond. There was no protocol for 42. The student was arrested, but the question had been heard. And once a question has been heard, it echoes. General Sora Lansing leaned over the holographic table inside the command nexus at Outpost Lazarus. Her eyes tracked a projection of the Zalvari sectors not by military readiness, but by psychological instability. The map was glowing. Operation Mindseed is succeeding, Commander Trent reported. We've confirmed 7 major mimetic uprisings. And this morning, their galactic anthem was re-released as a jazz cover by a Zalvari underground band. Sora leaned forward. How's it charting? Number 3, Trent said. Just below a remix of a Terran sea shanty. Sora almost smiled. Then she turned to the room, military minds, sociologists, artists, and one rogue stand-up comic turned psychological warfare specialist. Status on the internal defection program? The comic, codenamed Knuckles, stood up and grinned. We've seeded enough existential doubt among the younger bureaucrats. They're asking questions like, why are our architecture lines all perfect? And, why don't we have chaos museums? And, last week someone launched a graffiti drone. It painted a 12-kilometer-long mural on the Ministry of Obedience that just said, try something new. And the response? Knuckles shrugged. They covered it up. But not before it got turned into 48,000 stickers. Lansing nodded. What about their emperor? Trent stepped in. Still hiding in the crystalline bastion. No public appearances. Last known statement was a single sentence. They've rewritten the meaning of war. Lansing exhaled. That was all she needed to hear. They weren't fighting humans anymore. They were fighting what it meant to be human. And losing. In a secret chamber aboard the Empire's grand flagship, the Ascendant Logic, strategist Voss Drell knelt before the Emperor's private communication terminal. The Emperor's voice came through in fractured tones, distorted by encryption and paranoia. The Terrans, mock us and still we fall. Voss Drell swallowed. Your radiance, should retaliate. Destroy Earth. Decapitate their cultural core. The silence stretched before the Emperor spoke again. Earth is not the core. What? They exported themselves. Their art. Their irony. Their madness. They embedded fragments of who they are across outposts in songs and jokes. There is no Earth. There is only them. The channel went dark. Voss Drell remained kneeling, cold sweat pooling at the base of his skull. The Empire had always known how to conquer. But what if the humans were not fighting to win? What if they were fighting simply to be understood? And what if, in being understood, they were winning anyway? On the Terran side, Sora Lansing stood at the edge of the viewing deck aboard TNS Catalyst. Before her, the galactic plane shimmered, hundreds of stars, thousands of worlds. We cracked them, Trent said beside her. No, she replied softly. They cracked themselves. We just asked the wrong questions. She turned to the observation glass and tapped it lightly. They thought they were advanced. But they built an empire that was allergic to change. To laughter. To fear. To the unknown. And us. She looked back at him. We are the unknown. We are the punchline to the joke they didn't know they were telling. A comms ping rang out. One of the cultural operatives had uploaded a final message to the Zalvari neural network. We've studied your perfection. It's impressive. But you never asked the one question that built our species. What if we're wrong? Back in Helix Hall, Velratha's claws dug into the obsidian armrest. He knew what was coming. Not an armada. Not a superweapon, but something far worse. An idea. An unkillable, unsilenceable, unpredictable idea. Humanity had weaponized imagination, and there was no armor for that. Velrath hadn't moved in 2 hours. Still as a monolith in the ruins of what had once been the Zalvari seat of power, he stared at the new sigil burned into the polished obsidian walls of Helix Hall. A simple Terran handprint. Under it, words written in dozens of Earth languages, some extinct, some thriving. We tried to talk. You demanded silence. So we told jokes instead. And now you finally understand. The chamber was silent. No security. No guards. No simulations running. Dinara had disconnected herself from the Imperial Nexus 36 hours prior, voluntarily. Her final message? A Terran quote. "I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that." Velratha's jaw trembled. His eyes scanned across once immortal architecture now painted with color and chaos. Murals, holographic memes, rewritten signage. And then, he heard it. Music. A human woman's voice echoed from deep within the hall's acoustics. Somewhere over the rainbow. The sound sliced through his neural cortex like light through old stone. Unstructured. Melancholy. Hopeful. A frequency the Empire had never catalogued, because they'd never let themselves feel it. And then the voice faded, into laughter. Not human but Zalvari. Someone, several maybe, laughing in defiance. In relief. Into freedom. He turned toward the noise. Down the far corridor, 3 Zalvari youths danced around a floating audio projector, blasting a looping remix of human nonsense phrases and cosmic jazz. Velrath approached. Slowly. Like an alien among his own people. One of the younger ones turned toward him, eyes dilated with something unfamiliar to the Empire. Uncertainty. But welcomed uncertainty. Executor? The youth said hesitantly. You hear it too, don't you? Velrath stood frozen. I hear them, he whispered. Aboard the TNS Catalyst, General Lansing sat across from the UEG's first official envoy to a post-hostile Zalvari faction. Specialist Luke Ramirez, mimetic warfare expert and former stand-up comedian. You're serious? Sora asked, raising an eyebrow. Luke nodded. They asked us to send cultural advisors. Not weapons experts. Not envoys. Storytellers. Storytellers? They want us to teach them how to imagine. Sora leaned back in her seat. She'd commanded fleets. Overseen campaigns that would be studied for centuries. But none of it had pierced the heart of the enemy like this. An invitation to wonder. They don't want to be afraid anymore, Luke said. But they don't know how to stop. Sora tapped her desk console and pulled up the latest report from Deep Sector 9. A former Imperial world now lit with neon. Zalvari youth painting murals, quoting Shakespeare, remixing Terran myths with their own. One of the painted phrases caught her eye. Every civilization is one joke away from enlightenment. She smiled. Meanwhile, in the crystalline bastion, the Emperor of the Zalvari sat alone. The lights dimmed. His once golden armor hung like a relic beside him, untouched for days. On the table before him sat a cube. Ancient. Burnt. Human. A Terran child's toy. A Rubik's Cube. He'd spent 3 days trying to solve it. He'd run its geometry through simulations. Studied its math. Attempted quantum solutions. Nothing worked. Then, in frustration, he twisted it randomly. And suddenly, click. 3 sides aligned. His breath caught. He laughed. It was a sharp, foreign sound. Unrehearsed. Uncontrolled. But real. He turned toward the window, toward the galaxy his kind had ruled for millennia, and whispered, Perhaps, we are the ones who must evolve. Years later. The Treaty of the Infinite Jest was signed aboard a neutral Terran Zalvari station made of recycled warships and suspended between binary stars. No security. No military displays. Just diplomats, poets, hackers, and comedians. The new cultural liaison, a Zalvari named Truel, wore a Terran hoodie that said, Make empires weird again. And when she spoke into the intergalactic broadcast, her message wasn't one of submission or conquest, but curiosity. We feared you because you were different. But in fearing difference we feared growth. Now, we want to learn how to dream. Behind her, human and Zalvari artists unveiled a new joint sculpture. A constantly changing hologram that randomly recombined historical data, absurd memes, philosophical riddles, and deep cultural references. Its name? Entropy is a feature, not a bug. Back on Earth, in a small theater in New Manhattan, Luke Ramirez closed his stand-up set with one final joke. And then the Emperor says, You're telling me the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the what? The audience, human and alien alike, exploded with laughter. Even Velrath was there. Sitting in the back, disguised, nodding slowly. He still didn't get all the jokes. But he was learning. Humanity hadn't destroyed the most advanced empire in the galaxy. They'd done something far more terrifying. They'd taught it to feel, to laugh, to wonder. And as the stars turned above and new stories were told, between species, beyond boundaries, across dimensions, one quiet truth echoed through the galaxy like a whisper. You can't enslave the mind that questions. You can't kill the soul that laughs. And you can never, ever conquer a people who write their pain into punchlines. Humanity didn't just win. They rewrote the rules. The end. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the Void Narratives to explore more human-driven chaos, cosmic rebellion, and the unstoppable power of imagination in the stars. Because out there, it's weird, it's wild, and we're just getting started.